Hey everyone, it's Logan. I wanted to stop in and give you a brief introduction into today's special episode. But before we do that, I need to mention our sponsor, as always, Mountain Ops. If you guys have not tried anything from Mountain Ops yet, I'm going to make it extremely easy for you. Get the sleep gummies. You will thank me later. If you're anything like me and you have a hard time getting to sleep at night because your brain is going a million miles a minute, these will be an absolute game changer for you. You'll go to sleep quick, you'll stay asleep, and you will not wake up in the morning feeling super groggy like all the other sleep aids out there on the market. So use code Dad Bods at checkout and you'll get 20% off. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different. You guys have heard us talk about our friends at Connect and Conquer multiple times on this show. Well, back in September, they asked Tyson and I to speak at one of those events and share the Dad Bods and Beards origin story. Basically, it's some of the events in my life that led up to this point, Tyson and his experiences that led here, how he and I connected over social media a few years ago with the Copper John's beard company he had started, how we met Tommy and all of the work that Tommy does on the back end to make us look and sound good, and how that all comes together to create the Dad Bods and Beards podcast and everything that we put out on social media that you guys know and love and really truly support us in. That's what we have to offer you guys today. It's the audio and video recording of that event. Whether you're listening to it here just in a podcast form or you want to see the full video on YouTube or Spotify, you can catch it there. Now, bear in mind, we do trip over our words. We do get emotional. We do stumble a little bit. Not only is this the first time we've ever had a public speaking event in the form of speaking about Dad Bods and Beard, but you can see how emotionally invested we are in this work. We feel called to doing what we're doing, which is giving men permission to talk about the things that we feel like we can't talk about. So bear with us, enjoy this, and please keep in mind that we could not do this without any of you. We love you guys. I'm Logan. This is Tyson. We're the hosts of Dad Bods and Beard podcast. It's a podcast that we started a year and a half ago. We've had a lot of great success. It's a show that shines a spotlight on the ever-growing problem with men's mental health and the fact that we live in a world where you're told to be quiet. You're told not to talk about your feelings. You're told not to talk about your struggles. So we aim to shine a spotlight on that and show that men should have the permission to speak about your struggles, speak about the things that we all deal with, and just show that you can still retain your masculinity, but also talk about the things that we need to improve on.
Yeah, and Logan and I are best friends, but we just met each other like 2 years ago. Like, it's weird.
Super weird.
Never thought you would meet your best friend when you're in your 40s.
He's 40s, I'm 30s.
But if you look at some of the comments, he's 50 and I'm 60, so we've had a rough life. But with that being said, it didn't start like that. Like, we've both had our roads to get where we are, and it's not always easy. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so whenever we talk about mental health, I mean, it's kind of a taboo subject a lot of times, especially if it's something you've never talked about before, because men and vulnerability are not really synonymous a lot of the times, right? When I talk about my mental health struggles and my battle with bipolar, a lot of times when I first started my journey of finally admitting it to people, I always started with, well, I was diagnosed with bipolar in 2017. But through this journey, I've learned that me and my story are so much deeper than a diagnosis 7 years ago. Not a lot of people are actually familiar with bipolar as they should be, and a lot of times it's used in a joke, which I don't take offense to it, of like, oh, he's just being bipolar. But bipolar is a mood disorder that pretty much you have the pendulum of human emotion where you can experience extreme highs and extreme lows, and most of the time everybody operates within a very small portion of that pendulum. Unfortunately, because of a chemical imbalance, I have the full range of emotion, and sometimes I end up in a rapid cycle moment where I can go from one end to the other, whether thinking I could start the most successful business in the world to being completely suicidal, sometimes in a very short period of time. That was something that I didn't know about myself for a very long time. I think now, as a man in my 30s, looking back, my first manic episode, I was 20 years old. I was a missionary in Canada, and I was regularly being visited in the middle of the night by dark hallucinations that were telling me the worst parts about myself, telling me that I should just be done, that I should end everything, and that I should just rid the world of my problems. Realizing now that those were the darkest parts of my mind manifested as my worst insecurities because of a chemical imbalance in my brain. Moving on in my life, I put on and got really good at wearing masks. I was the happy-go-lucky, charismatic boy that my family knew for years. But as I aged, as I matured, so did my mental illness. Left untouched, left undiagnosed, it got worse. I was misdiagnosed as only ADHD, ended up on some medications that just made everything worse. In that time, I got married, started having kids, and my life was falling apart. I thought that I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing, but behind my masks, I was screaming and crying. I was gaining weight at a rapid rate, and I was unhealthy, very suicidal. But I had a beautiful wife, a beautiful daughter. My wife was pregnant with our second child, and I wanted to die. I had every reason in the world to stay, but I wanted to be done because I felt like a burden. I felt like my life was nothing but taxing on my wife and my children and my friends and everybody. But I could not have been more wrong, because the world tells men to be tough, but toughness has nothing to do with it. It's a chemical imbalance. It's situational. It's seasonal. It can be genetic. The point that we try to make with Dad Bods and Beards is that you can talk about these issues without being viewed as weak. You can talk about these issues without being viewed as less than, or somebody that can't be a provider, somebody that can't be somebody's rock. Unfortunately, with bipolar, it erodes your interpersonal relationships. And I started hurting the most important relationship, which is my wife. Sorry. Unfortunately, because of a chemical imbalance and being undiagnosed for so long, I caused trauma in my wife's life because of the back and forth, the insecurity, the financial mistakes, and all of the different horror stories that can come with such a severe mental illness that's left undiagnosed and untouched. On October 17th of 2017, I disappeared. I woke up 3 miles away from where I was supposed to be after a blackout period in a pharmacy parking lot with the police looking for me. My parents were looking for me. My wife was pregnant with our second child, and before I knew it, I was in the back of a police car on the way to the emergency room to get discreetly escorted through the back room to get seen for a mental evaluation. As a 27-year-old man sitting across from a psychiatrist a few days later with my dad sitting next to me, talking about something that I never thought that I'd deal with, which is depression, anxiety, a mental illness, a chemical imbalance, finally getting answers and feeling like, oh, this makes sense, but then realizing that I have such a long road ahead of me. Over 90% of marriages are with a bipolar spouse end in divorce. And as much as I was determined for that to not be the case, I knew that it was going to take a lot of work. And it still takes a lot of work to this day. If it were not for my wife, I would not be here. She is my rock. She's my reason. And I refused to leave my babies without their father. I dove deep into everything I could find between cognitive behavioral therapy, medication, standard therapy, and at the same time, I hid my diagnosis for years from everybody except for my wife and a few other select people. In 2022, after the COVID craze and after the TikTok craze, I decided to get on TikTok. I decided to start making funny videos and make a joke about my bipolar. I decided to use it as a platform and not a crutch. And that led me to this relationship. I had a much longer beard at the time, and I started using what I used at the time as a shield for my masculinity. I grew my beard out long because it made me feel tough, made me feel strong, it made me feel more masculine, but it was nothing but a mask. But as I started to improve my mental health, as I started to improve my marriage, as I started to improve my overall life, I started to take care of my beard, and I liked the look, and it was probably 11 inches at the longest at one point, and that's where I met Tyson. Tyson owns and operates Copper John's grooming company, has amazing beard care products. I reached out to him over TikTok because I fancied myself a little influencer at the time and said, what do you have? And realized he lived in Utah, I live in Utah. We actually met at a beard care competition, or a beard competition.
This guy's putting beard oil in, it's a beard care.
Yeah, he's a beard care company. But we hit it off and connected really quickly, realizing that he and I had a lot of similar stories when it came to just different struggles in our life. And that led us to, like I said, a very strange relationship and friendship that happened later on in life.
You can see why I love Logan. He's one of the best guys I know. I can tell him anything without judgment. And that's why our podcast, I feel like, is doing so well. Is just, we can be us. Sheesh, I'd never cry.
I'm the crier.
I
You're
don't
the
cry.
crier.
We did a personality test, and out of like 100, I'm like number 2 of not crying. It was, ask Brock. Brock's the one who told me to take it. But 2 weeks ago, I got a contract for $1 million, my first contract ever for Copper Johns. Thanks. And the podcast, we get 750,000 to 1 million views a week. But it hasn't been easy. My wife and I would have endless nights where I would literally sleep an hour to 2 hours a week or a day. If that, my wife would miss sleep. Like I would talk to Logan on the phone, I would fall asleep as we were talking. That's how tired it was. But in 2012, we'll start. 2012, I lost my job. Not due to performance or anything like that. Just the next door neighbor of the owner's daughter graduated college and she took my job. And I have 6 kids at the time. I still have 6 kids. No, they're good.
Good.
Isaac's right back there. He's wonderful. He just got back from Paraguay on his mission. But I don't know if you guys have ever lost a job and you feel like a failure. You're about to lose your house. You're about to lose your car. You don't have money to buy even food. I worked 3 part-time jobs trying to make ends meet as an adjunct professor. I worked at Blockbuster, if you guys remember that. You don't.
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay. And I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods. And when we got paid direct deposit, I would still be negative. I got to the point where I told my wife, I'm like, I shouldn't be here. Like, you would be better off without me here. There's someone better out there for you that can make you happier, more secure about your life. And it was rough. And it still is. Like, you know, we, in 2000, I'm way skipping. I have notes. If I can see. No, I'm good. I don't cry. This is weird.
Cry. You are crying.
I don't. Okay, that's where I was. So, I think it's because Isaac's here. After I lost my job, we found another one. It's been taking forever to get out of that hole. Once you lose that job, you're running on credit, running on savings, you just end up just not having anything. There were so many people who came out of the woodworks just to help me. I remember getting a pink slip on the door, and they would go out, and I wouldn't know who would come and pay our power bill. And that's one thing I'm excited to do, is to do that for people. But, sheesh. This isn't me. But the hardest thing I had to deal with was with my daughter. She's my best friend. At the time, she wasn't. We were butting heads a lot. And come to find out, she had an eating disorder that got misdiagnosed as borderline personality, which is one of the highest suicidals out there. If you have borderline, most likely you're not going to make it after 20. And she tried to take her life twice. She hurt herself multiple times. And having a daughter like that, losing your job, and not feeling like a man because you're not strong enough to hold it together, that was the hardest thing for me. But I met with a spiritual leader, me and my wife did. And luckily, my wife and I have always been amazing. We're best friends. We've been married 22 years. But we talked to the spiritual leader, and he goes, take action today or 2 years from now, you will still be where you are. And because of that counsel, what the freak? We started Copper Johns. It's been 4.5 years of us working nonstop, I mean, nonstop. I work a full-time job. I work 8 hours there, and then I also work 8 hours with Copper Johns. Usually more. I do 3 lives a week. We do our Dad Bods and Beards podcast. And it's been tiring. It's been exhausting. But the whole thing, the reason why we do this is Copper John's motto since the beginning is be proud of who you are. Because it's really important to me that you guys go out there when you have hardships, when you feel like you shouldn't belong, that you have the power to step outside and know that you look the best you possibly can be. And so I try to give you that product and that information to be able to do that. And then Logan and I met, and this is where I feel like this is where Logan and I just crushed it, because we were like both struggling, and then we're open and vulnerable, and now we're working on the inside. So not only is Copper John's be proud of who you are, now we're working on the inside with Dad Bods and Beards.
So like Tyson is saying, that when we kind of came together with the commonality of both enjoying growing our beards out. I know it sounds kind of funny, a bunch of bearded weirdos getting together, but it was through that charity event of a beard competition where we finally met, started talking. You guys know how it is when you're with your best friend. We connected very quickly in a very strange way. Our wives are still a little weirded out by it. But the fact that
it's true, though.
It's very weird.
We have a lot of people who are gay that just love us. Yeah. Want us to be a couple. And we're like, we're not, guys.
We're not. But with Copper John's motto being be proud of who you are, we work on the outward expression of confidence with men through the Copper John's grooming company. And through Dad Bods and Beards, we work on the inner confidence of men, trying to build you guys up from the inside out. So like we said, in a world where you are told to be quiet, you're not tough, suck it up, quit crying, we view it as a higher form of strength to be able to acknowledge your weakness, work on your weakness, and come together with other like-minded men and women and talk about things that we can improve on. So I know that we don't normally fit the bill with this group of guys because we do have the Dad Bods, but we're so appreciative to be here, and we just having the opportunity to stand up and share our story and share our mission and connect with all the different people here is just insanely inspiring to us, and we appreciate it.
So one last thing, and I'm going to write that. I wrote this down because I didn't want to miss it. But as our mantra goes out to the world, we found out a lot of success because of all of us going through. Okay, all of us are going through something. All of us need help. And if you can create an environment like Connect and Conquer, where men can be vulnerable and open, that makes all the difference. They are no longer alone. They can feel confident to be proud of who they are. It's important that we just can be a brotherhood. We need that. Women are really good at it. Women are stupid good at it. We suck. And so this is something that I absolutely love. I'm grateful that Brock put this together and Sean put this together so that we can actually go and be vulnerable and have breath work. I remember like when we just did breath work, holy crap. I was like, I don't know if it was John but like they touched me. I'm like, oh, I cried again. Like, I guess I cry a lot.
I don't think you get to say that anymore.
But anyway, this is awesome, guys. Thanks for having us.
So, thanks, guys. Woo!